How Spinoza's philosophy can free you from suffering. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you've ever feared was nothing but a creation of your own mind. This isn't a magic trick, a psychological game, or an empty promise of optimism. It's a truth so profound that once you grasp it, your perspective on life will never be the same. How often have you experienced anxiety, fear, or frustration over something that, in hindsight, wasn't as catastrophic as it seemed? How many nights have you spent lying awake, tormented by worries that lost their power the next day? How many times has your mind convinced you that failure, rejection, or disaster were inevitable, only for reality to prove otherwise? Think back to a time when you were terrified of an outcome, perhaps a public speech, an exam, or a difficult conversation. Yet when the moment arrived, you handled it far better than you expected. The fear you felt before wasn't rooted in reality. It was a product of your imagination. Fear and suffering often feel real, but in most cases, they are simply mental constructs. The real problem is that we let these illusions control our lives. They paralyze us, cloud our judgment, and keep us from embracing opportunities. But what if suffering doesn't come from external events, but rather from how we interpret them? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Mind Dose channel so you never miss out on upcoming videos about personal and spiritual growth. Now, let's get started. The mind's deception. Consider how often we let our thoughts dictate our emotions. Suppose you suspect that someone is speaking negatively about you. Your mind starts spinning a narrative, creating dialogues, imagining worst-case scenarios. Hours or even days pass as you wrestle with these thoughts. But what if it was never true? What if that person wasn't even thinking about you? Your suffering in this case was self-imposed, born from an illusion, not reality. Our minds tend to react to imagined threats as if they were real, leading us to experience unnecessary stress, sadness, and fear. But here's the breakthrough. There is a way to break free from this cycle. A method rooted in philosophy that enables you to see life as it truly is, without the distortions of fear and anxiety. This idea isn't new. It has existed for centuries, and it was profoundly explored by a man who, for daring to challenge conventional wisdom, lost everything. Baruch Spinoza, the man who challenged perception. To understand this life-changing perspective, we need to look at the life of Baruch Spinoza. Born in 1632 in Amsterdam, Spinoza was raised in a strict Sephardic Jewish community. His parents, having fled persecution in Spain and Portugal, sought refuge in a society where they could live in peace. From an early age, Spinoza exhibited an exceptional intellect, questioning religious doctrines that others accepted without hesitation. His inquiries, however, were unwelcome. The Jewish community in Amsterdam maintained a delicate balance with the surrounding Christian world and avoided attracting undue attention. Spinoza's ideas, particularly about God, suffering, and free will, threatened this stability. He immersed himself in the works of great thinkers, including Aristotle and Averroes, and began forming radical conclusions. Traditional religious beliefs did not hold all the answers. He saw God not as an external entity with human-like desires, but as the very fabric of existence itself, the laws that govern nature, the essence of reality. This view was revolutionary and dangerous. Exiled for his beliefs, at the age of 23, Spinoza faced a life-altering decision. His community summoned him before a tribunal, demanding that he renounce his beliefs. When he refused, they issued a decree of excommunication, effectively erasing him from their world. The verdict was absolute. Let him be cursed by day and cursed by night. Let his name be forgotten and his memory erased from the earth. From that moment, Spinoza ceased to exist in the eyes of his community. He was abandoned by family, friends, and neighbors. His very identity was erased. For most people, this would have been a breaking point. But instead of succumbing to despair, Spinoza transformed his exile into a source of strength, solitude as a path to wisdom. Banished from his former life, Spinoza made a humble living as a lens grinder. With the little money he earned, he dedicated his time to philosophy, developing ideas that would later shape modern thought. He proposed a radical notion that human freedom does not lie in making choices but in understanding reality. True liberation comes from seeing the world without illusion, without false expectations, and without attachment to how we think things should be. And from this insight, Spinoza reached a groundbreaking realization. The universe follows a pattern, and so do you. Spinoza observed that everything in nature operates under fixed laws. The planets follow predictable orbits, rivers flow toward the sea, and the seasons change in a consistent cycle. If the universe adheres to an intricate but necessary order, then why would humans be any different? For centuries, people believed in free will, the idea that we have complete control over our decisions. But Spinoza challenged this notion, arguing that our choices, emotions, and fears are simply the result of preceding causes. Consider this. Did you choose your fears? Did you consciously decide what situations cause you anxiety? Did you pick the personality traits that define you? Of course not. Your mind, shaped by genetics, upbringing, and past experiences, automatically reacts to situations based on deeply ingrained patterns. This means that much of what we consider personal choice is merely the unfolding of prior causes. The illusion of control. This idea may feel unsettling. If everything is determined, what's the point of trying? Why bother striving for change? But here's the insight that makes Spinoza's philosophy revolutionary. Freedom isn't about controlling life, it's about understanding it. The moment you stop resisting reality and start seeing things as they are, your suffering decreases. You stop blaming yourself for things beyond your control. You stop holding on to expectations that reality will bend to your desires. Instead, you align yourself with the natural order of things, flowing with life rather than fighting against it. How to apply Spinoza's wisdom to your life. Understanding Spinoza's perspective on suffering and fear is one thing, but putting it into practice is where true transformation happens. By following 3 key principles, you can begin to free yourself from unnecessary distress and live with greater peace. The first thing to do is observe your emotions without judgment. When fear, anger, or sadness arise, your immediate reaction might be to resist or suppress them. Instead, Spinoza's wisdom teaches us to simply observe these emotions as they come. Ask yourself, is this a real problem, or is my mind exaggerating it? More often than not, what troubles us isn't the actual event but the meaning we attach to it. By stepping back and watching your emotions without immediately reacting, you create space to understand them better. This shift in awareness helps break the automatic cycle of suffering. The next step is to use reason to see reality as it is. Our emotions are powerful, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. Suppose someone criticizes you. Your first instinct might be to feel hurt or defensive. However, instead of reacting emotionally, pause and analyze the situation logically. Ask yourself, is this criticism valid? Is there something useful I can take from it? By shifting from emotional reaction to rational analysis, you begin to free yourself from unnecessary pain. Most suffering arises not from events themselves, but from our refusal to accept things as they are. When you view life through a lens of reason rather than attachment, challenges become opportunities for growth rather than sources of stress. Finally, accept what you cannot change. One of the biggest causes of suffering is our resistance to reality. We often wish for life to unfold according to our expectations, but things don't always go as planned. Flights get cancelled, people disappoint us, and setbacks happen. Instead of resisting what is beyond your control, ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? How can I adapt? The moment you stop fighting against reality and start embracing it, your suffering diminishes. Spinoza believed that true freedom doesn't come from controlling everything around us, but from aligning ourselves with the natural order of life. When you learn to accept what you cannot change, you gain a sense of peace that no external circumstance can shake. When you start practicing these 3 principles, watching your emotions without instantly reacting, using logic to see things as they really are, and letting go of what you can't control, you begin to break free from the illusions that hold you back. Spinoza's wisdom is simple, yet profound. True freedom isn't found in bending the world to your will, but in shifting the way you see it. The moment you understand that, life stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like something you can finally embrace. The decision that changes everything. Spinoza lived his life in solitude, with few riches and little recognition. Yet, centuries later, his philosophy continues to impact those seeking wisdom. Suffering is not an external force, it's a product of the mind. Now, you have a choice. You can continue living under the illusion of fear, allowing suffering to dictate your life. Or, you can embrace reality for what it is, free yourself from illusions, and live with greater peace. The world may not change, but how you see it can. And that is where true freedom begins.